Hey, what's going on, gang? Nate on the Stone here. Welcome back to my channel and to the 68th episode of The Rolling Stone. Hope that you all are doing well, as always. Hope that the fast disappearing of 2020 is not leaving you lurched in the grips of panic like it has to certain people who shall remain nameless, but who posts YouTube videos onto this channel as often as he can. Mark Stein has said that the summer of 2020, he's described it as the summer that never really started. That is a beautifully concise way of describing what we have just gone through. I mean, here we are, it's August, fall, autumn, looking at us right in the face, and instead of being able to regale our friends, or at least social media, with stories of summer plans, summer vacations, summer trips, we're still locked in our homes. And the people who aren't still staying in their homes, like all the experts are telling everyone, they're rioting and insurrecting in the streets, attempting to burn down the fruited plains that has done nothing except allow them to actually try to burn those same said fields down. It's been a very strange time. In fact, the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times, has never been more clear in my mind. But enough of that. Let's get on with this edition of the Rolling Stone. And our first story, once again, in continuing with this habit, it's not even really a story. It is a train of thought that was brought to the fore of my mind by a tweet that I saw. Now, this particular tweet was posted onto Twitter by Byron York, who, in case you don't know, is the chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner. He's also a contributor over at Fox. He's written a couple of books, the latest one of which was The Vast Left-Wing Conspiracy. And on August 2nd, Byron York wrote this tweet. Quote, Colin Kaepernick won. When he started, just one athlete refused to stand for the national anthem. Now, just one athlete refuses to kneel during the anthem. In the course of weeks, a complete collapse of a hallowed American ritual. Unquote. And he also included in that tweet a picture where it shows all of these NBA players. Okay, the players of both teams, the coaches, the refs, everyone except for one man, kneeling during the national anthem. Now, the man who did not kneel in question was Orlando Magic forward Jonathan Isaac, who, as CNN wrote, quote, became the first NBA player to stand for the national anthem as the league resumed play after a 20-week hiatus due to the coronavirus pandemic, unquote. Now, isn't that an amazing isn't that just an amazing sentence to write? He became the first NBA player to stand for the national anthem. I mean, that just reinforces what Byron York said on Twitter, that tweet that I just read to you. In the course of just a few years, instead of the norm being that we all stand for the national anthem, for the Pledge of Allegiance, for the American flag, for our flag, the flag of our home and our homeland, our motherland. Now, if you don't kneel during the national anthem, you're the odd one out. You're the screwball. And in Mr. Isaac's case, this was made even more so by the fact that CNN had to point out, he's black, but he didn't kneel. He also was the only member of the team who was not wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt. And he said he was actually wearing his jersey. Imagine that. An NBA player about to play an NBA game wearing his jersey? Who would have thunk it? Now, when, of course, he was asked about why didn't you kneel with your teammates, with the subliminal message being, why were you stabbing your teammates in the back? This is what he said, okay? Jonathan Isaac said that putting that shirt on, okay, the Black Lives Matter shirt, and kneeling didn't go hand in hand with supporting black lives. He says, quote, "For me, black lives are supported through the gospel. All lives are supported through the gospel. We all have things that we do wrong, and sometimes it gets to a place that we're pointing fingers at whose wrong is worst, or whose wrong is seen. So I feel like the Bible tells us that we all fall short of God's glory. That will help bring us closer together and get past skin color, and get past anything that's on the surface and doesn't really get into the hearts of men and women," unquote. And of course, people are scratching their heads, literally. Okay, basketball rival Dane Moore said, "I'm very curious about and will be patient for Jonathan Isaac's explanation here. Standing for the anthem is one thing, but seeming to be intentional about not wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt, I don't know, man." Okay, so people are losing their minds, which, again, I will repeat myself, simply reinforces what Byron York said on Twitter, that the norm has shifted. The norm has shifted. Instead of standing for the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag, now you kneel. And if you don't kneel, you're suspicious at best, and at worst, you are one of the enemy. You have marked yourself with what ideologues would consider the mark of the beast, the mark of reason, the mark of tradition, the mark of patriotism, Americanness, okay? Being proud of being part of the Western heritage, the Western tradition, the Western story. That's what you mark yourself as. Now, Byron York is 100% correct. He was 100% correct. I really want to dive in. I want to take this opportunity to dive in with why I think that norm collapsed, okay? Because norms just don't collapse of themselves, okay? Hallowed rituals, whether they're American or not, norms, habits, they don't just automatically collapse. Something happens which allows them to be hollowed out, and then which allows them to just be destroyed in a puff of dust and debris. And what happened here, in this case, is that no one actually nipped this in the bud. And what I mean by that is that when Colin Kaepernick started kneeling, which I believe was in 2016, no one really pressed him on it. No one stopped him on it. Everyone said, when I say everyone, okay, I'm talking specifically about people on the right, whether that was, a lot of your average people, average conservative Joe on the street, or conservative commentators, okay? No one said that that he shouldn't do that. Everyone said that it was horrible. Everyone said that it was disrespectful. Everyone said that it was hypocritical, that a guy who was able to make his living playing a game was protesting the country, the culture, the society that allowed him to live that fantasy lifestyle. Okay, everyone pointed those things out, but when push came to shove, everyone said, there's nothing that we can do about it. It's his First Amendment right. Okay, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we talked about Allie Beth Stuckey and about honoring the national flag, honoring the American flag, right? Because Allie Beth Stuckey, as we pointed out in that video, she thinks that it's perfectly all right to burn the American flag, to kneel for the American flag. She says that it's horrible, but if at the end of the day you're not going to say that it's wrong and therefore people should not do it, then you are for it. There's no middle ground here on this issue, gang, from the way that I see it. Ben Shapiro is another one. He recently, a few weeks ago, was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Ben Shapiro said that he didn't have any problem with, people kneeling during the national anthem as a form of quote-unquote peaceful protest, which I believe, is a bunch of crock. It's not peaceful whatsoever. It has the aurora peacefulness about it. But again, as we talked about a few weeks ago in our regular On the Stone video, it's not peaceful whatsoever. Okay? So in large part, we are here, okay, where Byron York can make his observation that a hallowed American ritual has completely collapsed. We are here largely because no one defended that American ritual. No one defended it. Because if you say, it's horrible, I would never do it, but, it's your First Amendment right to do it. Or if the sole strength of your argument is that, well, it's disrespectful to veterans. It's a slap in the face to veterans who put their lives on the line for that flag and for your freedoms. No one ever talks about their country, really. Always, they defended our freedom. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second, gang. When those are your arguments, you don't have an argument. You are not standing firmly, arm in arm, shield to shield, protecting these hallowed American rituals from attack. Okay? Because here's the truth. Here's the truth. It doesn't matter how bad the other side's argument is, or how bad their behavior is, how bad their reasoning is, how bad their logic is. If they have an argument and you basically have none, if your argument boils down to, well, I personally disagree with this, but it's your right to do that, their argument is always going to trump your non-argument. Something will always beat nothing. Okay? Something will always beat nothing. That's just a law of nature. That is just an irrefutable law of nature. Something will always beat nothing. Nature abhors a vacuum, okay? As I've said numerous times before here on the channel. Which raises, in and of itself, its own question. Why aren't we defending these hallowed American rituals? Why is the right in particular, why are we so terrified of actually making the argument, of actually just saying, no, that's wrong. You can't do that and be a good person and can't, or be a good American, or be a good citizen. You cannot do this and be a good citizen. Okay? There are ways of protesting which do not hollow out, okay, one of the social glues that is supposed to tie us all together, in which we honor not just, okay, the system in place now, the government we have now, but our entire history, culture, heritage, principles, ideals, etc. Okay, there are ways to do that. This is not one of them. Why are we so terrified? I think, if I had to hazard a guess, is because we, on the right, have fetishized freedom. We have made freedom the end all and be all of everything. We have made the same mistake that Marxists made, especially classical Marxists, where Marx was running around in the 19th century saying everything can be boiled down to economics. All of human history, all of human advancement, all of human culture, language, theology, philosophy, everything is explained through the prism of economics, okay? That's obviously absurd. But the contemporary American conservative movement has made the same mistake by boiling everything down to freedom. So if you make the argument that it's all about freedom, well, then the right's not going to do anything. At most, again, they will say, well, we personally disagree with it, so we would never do it, and we just ask that you respect our right to dissent. But, you respect our freedom not to do that. But again, something is always going to beat nothing. Okay, that's a nothing argument. There's no passion behind it. There's no imagination behind it. That's not something that you can rally around. That's not a flag that you can bring a group of people around to inspire and believe in and move. That's nothing. That's basically a coward's way out. Saying, oh, I don't like this, but again, I don't really want to take the time to oppose you, to fight you for whatever sundry and miscellaneous reasons that I have, so please just leave me alone so that, I won't be forced to do that. It doesn't work that way. That's the first thing that it shows. And I'm thinking about actually making a whole video devoted to that idea, freedom, what freedom is, and this fetishizing of freedom that we've done. But it also proves something else, okay? If every single issue is, quote unquote, not the hill to die on, you're going to lose all the hills. How many times have you heard that? How many times have you heard a commentator or a talking head or a politician or, just someone on the street, well, that's not the hill to die on. It could be anything. It could honestly be anything. It could be, opposing the redefinition of marriage. It could be, taking a harder stance on pornography. It could be, getting rid of no-fault divorce so that families aren't anemiatic and just dissolving left and right. It could be any number of issues. And how many times have you heard, oh, well, that's not the hill to die on. Good God. Have you seen the polls? Everyone is for this. So if we start opposing it, we're never going to win any support from anyone. We're never going to win any new elections. How many times have you heard that? I'm going to bet that you've heard it multiple times. Either personally or on television, on radio, reading a piece from whatever blog or conservative site that you're on. I'm betting that you've heard that several times, many times, in fact. I know that I have. But here's the thing. If every single issue is never the hill to die on, well then what issue actually is the hill to die on? Because if you're just left on if you just have one little hill and all the other little hills are controlled by the enemy, you're gonna lose. That's just a fact of life. You are going to lose. And also, we complain, and rightfully so, we lambast the fact that the culture has moved so far to the left. What did we expect when we didn't just lose the hills? We didn't just lose the culture war. What did we expect when we ceded the culture war to the left? Because we gave up all the hills. We gave up all the hills. Public opinion started shifting. Polls started going the other way, and all of a sudden, it's not the hill to die on. Magically, what we were all gung-ho to defend 5 years ago, 10 years ago, now all of a sudden it's not the hill to die on. Move on to the next issue. You don't win elections that way. You don't even win, and you definitely don't win or maintain cultures that way. In fact, you can put it as G.K. Chesterton put it in his Ballad of the White Horse, which is a wonderful piece of epic poetry. He said at one point, towards the end, I believe, if you would have the horse of old, you must scour the horse anew. Basically, if you want the white horse, if you don't want the grass and everything to take over, then you are going to have to constantly work to pick the grass, pick the weeds, so that you have the white horse, so it doesn't disappear before the onslaught of nature. That is the lesson. That is the lesson. If you give up all the hills because it's never the hill to die on, the right hill to die on, then you're guaranteed to lose. That is what's happened. And this example of the NBA and professional sports in general just going full blast, quote unquote, anti-racist, Black Lives Matter, critical theory, is living proof that when you give up, when you fetishize freedom and you surrender all of the hills, you lose the culture, you lose the culture war, and then you lose your country. Then guess what? You yourself don't have freedom anymore either. That is story number one.